Kenya. Tusikilize.
Terrible situation where Kenyans across the country are experiencing an unprecedented challenge in terms of accessing petroleum products in the needed quantities and at the correct pricing. Unfortunately, and of very deep concern to the government, is the fact that this crisis has been created and exacerbated by actions that are threatening the energy security of this nation. So this press briefing today, I want to provide you with two things. One, information of the current supply situation and our outlook moving forward. And two, I wish to clarify what the problem is and what the measures that government has taken and is going on to take in moving forward to ensure a normalization of the situation at hand. Now on the current supply situation. As you will all be aware, over the last few weeks, there has been anxiety across the world, and Kenya has been no exception. And there has also been fear about disruption in the distribution of many products, including petroleum products. Fortunately, we have not been subject to any shortages and disruption in our supply chains in regards to our petroleum products. Yet, arising out of speculation about whether, in fact, government could maintain the subsidy program and growing rumors about possibilities of price increase, we have been witness to actions that have distorted the market and our supply chains, actions that have created artificial shortages, actions that have caused panic and anxiety, negatively affecting productivity, and in some cases causing harm to Kenyans. In essence, creating energy insecurity across the breadth and length of our country. Disturbingly, these actions have gone on in spite of repeated assurance from the ministry and other parts of government. In the last 2 weeks in particular, because I anticipate somebody will say, what have you been doing? In the last 2 weeks, we have, and in many formations, the PS here, the regulator, have held numerous meetings with oil marketing companies and traders, both individually and collectively, to address any concerns and stress. In those meetings, we have offered firm assurances of government's full commitment to honor any obligations, and these were given repeatedly. In fact, these assurances were issued even in written format. I myself, upon listening to some of the concerns and petitions and witnessing stress across the country, have in the last week visited facilities, including our own port, where I was witness to cargo discharging, including last Friday. You will all recall that on Friday the 8th, I addressed the nation from the Kipevu oil terminal to confirm that we were secure with our supplies. That same day, the managing director of the Kenya Pipeline Company further confirmed that our storage systems were full with product. We have sufficient stock in our depots. Our schedule for incoming product is uninterrupted. We have seen, as at today, a downturn in the global pricing. And a week into addressing all these concerns with our sector players, yet we have to witness normalcy in the retail supply of fuel as we know it. Our internal distribution systems are under duress and Kenyans suffering. It is within this framework that we have decided as government that this is not an acceptable situation and that Kenyans should not be subjected to a situation that we are facing today. In fact, in my mind, this situation can only be equated to deliberate effort to sabotage this economy, which constitutes a capital crime in our statute books. I can confirm that the country has adequate stocks of petroleum and petroleum products. We have determined that some players have been holding this product, presumably and probably speculating that on this day of the month, the 14th, as you all know, price reviews will provide them with a cash windfall. This speculative behavior is not only a demonstration of bad faith, but in fact is insensitive to the mandate of the operators. Some players have additionally been diverting cargo earmarked for local use for export into the region to further enhance abnormal profits, really. There has not been even a question of increased demand on the other side. It is therefore regrettable in many ways that we are in this situation, which we had hoped would self-correct because of the measures that we have been taking. That this has not been the case, we are forced to act in order not to plunge this nation into an energy crisis. Therefore, conscious of the above context, I wish to inform as follows. One, that this government will not tolerate any entity or person that is causing distress, either by creating an artificial problem or stress. And in this regard, I wish to indicate any entity that is not ready, that is not able, that is not willing to work within the framework of the laws of Kenya is invited to vacate this market promptly. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, has so far issued show cause letters to those OMCs that failed to meet the required minimum operational stock levels, thus resulting in stock outs at their respective retail stations. It is noteworthy that the energy minimum operational stock regulations of 2008 require the maintenance of a specific stock requirement that guarantees the country security of supply, and therefore it is criminal offense not to maintain such stock. It has also been noted that during the stress period, some oil marketing companies and retail station operators were offering petroleum for sale at prices above the published maximum price in breach of Section 99(1)(n) of the Petroleum Act of 2019. Consequently, EPRA has issued further show cause letters to all those companies and persons, and any other person. Whoever is found in breach, I can assure you that we will take stern action against those persons and entities. The Ministry of Petroleum and Mining has filed the requisite complaints with the sector regulator, Competition Authority, and we have also approached state security agencies so that we can track and assess the level of culpability, if any. Let me make it clear here and now that we are going to follow this process to its logical conclusion. Kenyans have come from tough times, experiences the consequences of COVID-19. We are all trying to recover from its ravages, and we will not accept another layer of artificial constraints placed upon us. We will therefore go the full hog to bring all persons, all entities that are in breach of their licensing and operating guidelines to book, because we will not allow any disruption to the extent we have seen to this point. To place the country back to a path of normalcy, we have instituted the following measures. One, The ministry has sanctioned, I have sanctioned a process of reallocating the petroleum import capacity. The oil marketing companies who sold above their normal local quota during the crisis period will benefit from additional capacity, while those who sold less will have their respective capacities reduced. The rationalization of the petroleum import capacity sharing is aimed at creating a healthy balance between transit and local volumes. Second, we are taking measures to privilege the movement of fuel so that we can stock up across the country. In this regard, we are going to allow the movement of tankers on a privileged basis starting later today. And we hope that we can do this in the next 72 hours to stabilize the supply across the country. The movement of the fuel will be strictly in fidelity with the approved dispatch and merit order to all oil marketing companies. In this regard, I'm also calling upon all the retailing outlets to operate on a 24-hour basis so that we do not have Kenyans waking up in the middle of the night to go and try to fuel. In this regard, we are in touch with the Ministry of Interior and have arranged for the provision of security both for the movement of the freight as well as for the retailing outlets. Later in the day, the Inspector General will provide the full details in terms of securing that entire infrastructure from the depots to the last mile. Let me touch on the question of subsidy, which seems to have been the trigger point for this so-called crisis. A critical issue of debate and disputation has been the fuel stabilization program. I can confirm that as today, the ministry is in receipt of the full outstanding balance of the money that is payable to the oil marketing companies. As at yesterday, we had dispatched upwards of 34.6 billion since the program started last year, and as I've indicated, we will continue to disburse the outstanding money once we have done with the administrative procedures. Now, this fuel stabilization framework has enabled the pump price in Kenya to remain the lowest in the region. Again, I wish to disabuse the notion that in this country we are having higher prices. That is not the case. And let me just give you some figures. At the pump price today for Kenya, our super petrol, the gazetted price is 134.72 per litre. Our neighbors, Tanzania is at 144.72, Uganda 163.20, Rwanda 154.81, further south, South Africa 172.26, Zambia 175.42. For diesel, our pump price is 115.60 per litre. For neighboring Tanzania, it is 136.34, Uganda 140.80, Rwanda 155.84, South Africa 167.27, Zambia 174.27. And this is the value of the fuel stabilization program. Even as IPRA, according to the law today, goes on in the review, in the consideration of the pricing review, I have no doubt that we shall still continue to have the cheapest pump prices across all the categories. And this because the government will continue implementing the petroleum pump price stabilization program in order to continue cushioning customers against the otherwise high pump prices. If we didn't do that, today a Kenyan would have to pay 175 Kenya shillings out of the pump. Some people have queried the essence of this program. And yet, we have seen around the world that governments must intervene when there is an absolute shock, as there has been, in order to ensure both security and affordability. And this is why we are doing this as an administration. I therefore urge the oil marketing companies, the retail stations, and consumers to also play their part. May I reiterate the point I began with, that the country is sufficiently stocked with petroleum products, that our importation process and schedule has not been affected, and that in fact we have quantities that would last us up to the end of June without any issues. I therefore can confirm, even as we stand now, before some of the ships dock, we have 18 days of super petrol reserves. We have more than 20 days of diesel reserves. We have 11 days of dual-purpose kerosene in reserve. So there is no cause for panic whatsoever. That is why it is really disappointing that some actors chose self over the country and prioritized, in some cases, transit supply over local, thereby tilting the normal local to transit ratio, which should be 60 local, 40 transit. As a result, there has been the anxiety that we have witnessed, which should not take us into the Easter weekend. I urge Kenyans as well, as I did last week, to desist from making extra-normal bulk purchases of petroleum at this time. Let us await for the system to recalibrate and to normalize, since that increased demand creates a false constraint on the infrastructure, and it leads to disruptions. There is more than sufficient supply to meet our normal demand, and there can never be enough supply to meet hoarding. Please, there can never be enough supply to meet hoarding that we have witnessed in the last few days and the anxiety. The government will not abdicate on its solemn duty to secure the nation and to bring anyone or any corporation that undermines our national interest to accountability. We must. As a medium-term intervention, because we are looking beyond this situation, we have commenced a process of ensuring that the National Oil Corporation of Kenya, NOC, assumes its rightful responsibility of taking up the right quota for strategic reserve to secure this country from hostage-taking. We have seen that that is possible, and we must avoid it for the future. So I look forward to working along this path in the medium term. I reiterate that there is no need for panic, and I want to really wish every Kenyan normalcy. I believe that in the next 72 hours, we should have returned to the normal supply and demand cycle. And I want to take this opportunity as well to wish all of us good, blessed Easter holidays. And I want to believe that the red light on anyone's fuel tank will not be blinking soon. I thank you for your kind attention. I am happy to take any questions, and with me is the PS, is the regulator, is the MD NOC, and is the PS Energy. So I have my full complement here to take any questions.
CS Monica.
Can somebody help me to moderate?
Thank you very much. My name is Julian Samboko from NTV. Two very quick questions. First is, what is the prescribed timeline for settling subsidy arrears? And why I ask the question is because there is the pervasive view that there is misalignment between the time the government is paying oil seeds and their inventory cycle, and therefore you're throwing them into cash flow problems. Could you please give us a sense of that? Secondly, you have spoken very optimistically about the subsidy, and yet I have the CS Treasury on record indicating that going forward this is likely to be unsustainable, indicating that they could be paying upwards of 15 billion shillings every month in subsidy. If you look at the average right now, it's going to about 7 billion shillings, that's double. Could you please just clarify how you see this being sustainable in the long run?
You will take the payment schedule. Does anyone else wish to ask a question so we can take a couple?
My name is Omondi Elvis, Omondi from Truth FM. And I have a question on hoarding. You have accused the private firms of hoarding petroleum products, yet the very firm that is owned by the government, National Oil, has equally been experiencing shortage when it comes to the supply of petroleum products. Is it a case of you guys speaking from both sides of the mouth, or where is the problem actually?
Okay. There's only one side. Brenda, I can't hear you. Come closer. It's not on. Okay, all right.
So the first one is you paid about 34.6 billion to the oil marketers. So how much do you owe them at the moment? And then number two, could you also give us an update in relation to the Ruby CEO situation? And then number three, are these players that you're talking about that are facing some form of punishments, who are they? Could you give us the names, please? And at the same time, when you're talking about this subsidy, will it be a partial subsidy or a full subsidy? Thank you.
I think we should take those first, eh? And I'll allow the PS, who is the accounting officer, to answer to Julian in terms of the cycle of payments. Huh? But let me just answer Omondi in terms of me speaking from both sides of the mouth. Usually I'm not very good at that. One, we are not speculating, okay? We are not speculating. We know how much fuel lands. We know who has what allocation. We know who has disbursed what. So we are not thumb-sucking here. Huh? And so we are able to determine who has dispatched what amount to the market. So there is no speculation here. And I am speaking this with very firm backing of facts and figures. So we do know. I can tell you who has dispatched what amount, where, when, you know. And so when I talk about hoarding, I mean it in its real English meaning, i.e., not releasing the product in the line of the structured arrangements of the licensing and framework of operations in the market. Huh? So, and National Oil can speak for themselves in terms of how much they have dispatched or received. On the question of sustainability of subsidy, let me just touch on that. You will know the history of subsidy is that it is deployed in a situation of an unforeseen circumstance, which is this type of situation. And it is not a petroleum subsidy. We've seen subsidies in various other formats. During the COVID-19 situation, you know, there was a range of subsidies that the government provided for in order to cushion the country. And this is the essence of it. So there is no subsidy in the world that I know that is ad infinitum. It is intended for a specific purpose, to relieve stress and to get people back on their feet without necessarily the negative, the unanticipated consequences of hikes that have been brought by unforeseen circumstances. So I do not see that this subsidy would be forever, that would be cost for the government. But we calculated as an administration and determined that it was necessary at a certain point, and that is why it was established. But I will give PS a chance to speak to the cycle of processing the subsidy. PS, together with how much you have paid up to now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Waziri. I think there's been a lot of discussion about whether there is there is some kind of disparity between the way we pay the subsidy and the pricing cycle. There is no such disparity. I think, Julians, you and I spoke about this 2 weeks ago, and the assertion was from the oil majors and from the oil companies that they were experiencing financial problems, so they were not able to supply. And we paid them the very next day. Unfortunately, because we took them at their word, we said that the product would be in the tanks by Thursday. This did not happen. Clearly, there was another motive to tread water, looking, as the CS has said, towards a price change from April today. So clearly that was not the issue. If it was the issue, then we would not have been having this press conference. Yeah? But there is no, for example, like the CS have said, we've paid 34 billion. We currently owe them 14, which we have received from the National Treasury, and we will pay. But don't forget, this money does not belong to me or to Waziri. It's your money, which we must take care of, and we must make sure that it is well audited, the numbers are known before we can pay. So, EPRA will announce the results today, the price today. At that stage, we will then know what is the amount that will be paid in subsidy. But don't forget, they have not sold a single liter yet. Yet they know what it will be, but we have to make sure that all the numbers stack up. And it can take, a month, depending on whether there's budget or there's no budget. And in government, you cannot spend money, even you have it in the account, without a budget. And I think you saw the president signed the supplementary one budget. So these are the kind of things that we have to take care of for you and generally the citizens at large. Our responsibility is to you, the Kenyans, and not to the oil company. So I think we need to separate those two issues. Was there anything?
I think Brenda also asked me to clarify, to update on CEO Ruby's. There is no update. The CEO Ruby departed the country last night. Yes.
My name is Faisal. One, the ongoing shortage has been there.
My name is Faisal. My first question to you, Waziri, is why has it taken this long for the government to react to this? It's been 20 days. This issue has been happening as far out as the western part of Kenya, coming east during inwards and a reaction feeling. So 20 days, I think it's a long time for the government to react to this. The second question is, what sort of punishments will these oil marketing companies receive if you do not find the showcase levels satisfactory to what you are able to answer? And also, how was it established that Ruby's and all these other oil marketing companies were actually holding fuel? How was it established that they were holding fuel? And in terms of how much fuel they're selling outside the country, which was meant for Kenya, how much was it? The 60% you sold out outside the country.
Good afternoon. Citizen Digital. Just a single question addressed to PS Kamal, and I'll try to put some context to it. First, the question is, should we expect at least a fair reflection of the prices here? I'm not trying to preempt the review that will come later, but should we expect a fair reflection of the prices you have in Kenya versus Tanzania? And on the same note, has the application of the subsidy been a stretch too far? And given the context here, we saw the raise of the petroleum development levy just in September 2021 to the 5 shillings and 40 cents. And of course, the corrections have been happening. The subsidy was first applied in March 2021, from what I have, and it's been in application since. But we've seen those margins stretch a bit too far. Just going by the last review, 20 shillings on petrol, that's what the subsidy is covering. If the correction is 25 shillings, would you say that perhaps the trigger factor that we are discussing here today, there was a bit of a stretch too far in terms of how that subsidy was applied? Thank you.
You can speak to that, yeah? You can do. Okay.
I'm John Mufwang from the business daily. My questions are two. One, we saw the vigor with which the government was keen to report, to go by the word of the government, that Ruby's CEO. Now, Ruby's is not the only firm that has been accused of hoarding. Are we likely to see